Imagine a restaurant with one table and one impossible menu. On the plate is a rat. Beside it, a horse. Then a dog, a vulture, a chimpanzee, an insect, and one extremely offended polar bear. The waiter asks a simple question. Which of these animals would humans never eat? Your answer probably arrives before your reasoning does. One animal feels filthy. One feels like family. One feels too intelligent. One looks poisonous. One looks sacred. The insect looks like it entered through a window and has not yet accepted its new career. The polar bear would like to speak to management. But here's the problem. For almost every confident answer, somewhere in human history or geography, there is an exception holding a fork. So the mystery is not which animals humans never eat. The mystery is why a species can be dinner in one place, a friend in another, and absolutely unthinkable across the street. We are going to put 6 suspects on trial: poison, disease, bad economics, intelligence, companionship, and taboo. One of them looks like the obvious killer. It is not. And the strangest clue is not on the plate at all. It is in the mind of the person looking at it. First suspect, biology. Some animals really can hurt you when eaten. Certain tissues concentrate toxins. Pathogens can cross species. Spoiled meat can turn lunch into a regrettable medical autobiography. Take the famous warning about polar bear liver. Arctic stories made it sound almost supernatural. Eat the wrong liver and vitamin A becomes toxic. Modern case reports show the broader mechanism is real even far from the Arctic. In 2020, physicians described 3 people poisoned after eating the liver of a large carnivorous fish. They developed symptoms including headache, vomiting, and peeling skin. That is a dinner review written by your epidermis. The important detail is that the hazard belonged to a tissue and a dose, not to the entire idea of, quote, animal. Humans have eaten many species while avoiding a particular organ, gland, season, preparation, or life stage. The plate is not divided only by species, it can be divided with surgical precision. This part is food, that part is a biochemical ambush. So perhaps the animals we do not eat are the ones most likely to carry disease. That sounds stronger. Closely related species can share compatible pathogens, and contact during hunting and butchery can create opportunities for infection. Researchers testing monkeys hunted for bushmeat or kept as pets in Cameroon found a remarkable diversity of simian immunodeficiency viruses. Other teams identified simian T lymphotropic viruses in people exposed through non-human primate hunting and butchery. That evidence matters, but it does not support a cartoon in which one bite automatically creates an epidemic. Exposure can happen during capture, blood contact, butchery, transport, or consumption, and risk depends on the pathogen and the conditions. It also does not turn communities that depend on wild meat into villains. A recent analysis spanning more than 12,000 households across Central Africa found that wild meat remains an important protein source, especially for rural populations with limited alternatives. The biology is real, the livelihood is real, the conservation pressure is real. A good explanation has to hold all 3 without flattening people into a scary headline. And disease cannot be the universal answer, because familiar livestock can also carry pathogens, while many unfamiliar animals can be prepared and eaten without drama. Biology builds fences. Humans add gates, warning signs, recipes, rituals, inspections, and occasionally a chef who thinks a blowtorch counts as a research method. Yet there is an animal on our impossible plate that seems rejected for an even simpler biological reason. It eats the wrong things. We will return to that vulture, because its case exposes a very human confusion between an animal's dinner and our dinner. For now, suspect 2 is disgust. Rat, cockroach, maggot. Say those words near a buffet and watch the room develop a shared emergency exit. Disgust feels like evidence. It is fast, physical, and extremely confident. Your stomach does not submit citations, it simply votes no. And that alarm is useful. Food disgust tracks contamination cues, decay, bodily fluids, parasites, and unfamiliar textures. In a Swiss study of more than 2,800 people and another study spanning 9 countries with more than 5,500 participants, people with higher food disgust sensitivity perceived more food hazards. But notice the wording, perceived more hazards. Disgust and objective danger are not the same meter. If disgust were a fixed biological list, the world's menu should look much more alike than they do. Instead, insects create a beautiful natural experiment. In 8 focus groups comparing participants in Thailand and the Netherlands, cultural exposure shaped which insects people recognized as food and how they expected those insects to be prepared. For a person with experience, the question could be about flavor, texture, or cooking. For a person without it, the insect's legs may end the interview before taste is even considered. One diner sees a snack. Another sees a tiny employee of the sanitation department. Even that boundary can move. In a controlled study with whole crickets, information about a social norm increased how much participants liked and ate them. A paragraph did not erase every hesitation, but it nudged a reaction that often feels ancient and immovable. That is our first major clue. Disgust is not fake, and it is not a perfect lab test. It is a protective system trained by experience, identity, memory, and other people, which means your feeling of obviously not food is partly a cultural achievement. Someone taught your nervous system a menu so thoroughly that the lesson now feels like a reflex. And that menu can be incredibly specific. Shrimp is welcome. A land arthropod is suspicious. Cheese with living microbes is tradition. An unfamiliar fermented animal food is an incident. We are not inconsistent because humans are stupid. We are inconsistent because food is never only chemistry. It is memory. It is belonging. It is the smell of a kitchen where you were safe. Now return to the vulture. People often assume scavengers must taste like the things they eat, as though every animal were a sealed bag of its last lunch. By that logic, a chicken should taste faintly of corn, insects, and terrible decisions. Culinary science would become a chain of increasingly alarming invoices. Diet can influence tissue composition and flavor, and scavenging creates handling and contamination concerns. But it eats dead things is not a universal biological prohibition. Many animals humans routinely eat consume material that would repel us directly. Pigs are opportunistic omnivores. Chickens peck through soil and manure. Shellfish filter busy water. We separate the animal's ecology from the food product through culture, husbandry, processing, and familiarity. The vulture feels different partly because we have assigned it a job: clean up death. Putting the cleanup crew on a dinner plate collapses 2 categories we prefer to keep apart. That does not mean vultures should become food. Many are protected, slow-breeding, ecologically vital, and threatened. It means the first wave of disgust is not a complete scientific explanation. Suspect 3 is economics. Why raise a lion on meat so that you can later eat the lion when you could eat lower on the food chain? Every transfer of energy loses something. Large carnivores need territory, time, and prey. They can be dangerous to manage, slow to reproduce, and expensive to feed. From the perspective of a farm accountant, a tiger is less livestock and more a lawsuit with stripes. This helps explain why our major domestic meat animals cluster where they do. Cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, chickens, and fish can convert available resources into food under human-controlled systems. They reproduce on useful schedules. They tolerate density to varying degrees. People developed tools, breeds, markets, and cuisines around them. But economics explains rarity better than absolute taboo. Humans have eaten predators, scavengers, marine mammals, reptiles, and animals that make spectacularly inconvenient livestock. Hunting does not require turning a species into a farm. Wealth, scarcity, ritual, and status can make an inefficient food desirable precisely because it is difficult. Humanity has never looked at an impractical ingredient and universally agreed to calm down. So bad economics can push an animal away from the everyday plate. It cannot tell us why the same horse is livestock, transport, sport, companion, or cuisine, depending on the person and place. The horse is where this mystery gets personal. But before we reach it, we need to test the suspect many people trust most: intelligence. We do not eat animals that are too smart, right? Octopuses solve problems. Pigs learn quickly. Crows remember faces. Parrots use complex social information. Great apes are our close evolutionary relatives. Surely intelligence draws the line. Except humans eat pigs and octopuses. Some communities have eaten corvids. Non-human primates have been hunted for food. Intelligence may increase moral concern, but it does not create a consistent species boundary. Here is the uncomfortable midpoint of our investigation. We may not first measure an animal's mind and then decide whether it is food. Sometimes the food category changes how much mind we allow ourselves to see. In 3 experiments, researchers found that animals considered appropriate for human consumption were attributed less mental capacity. When participants expected to eat meat soon, mind denial increased, and that reduced the negative feeling around the choice. Another study comparing pet animals with animals commonly used for food found that meat eaters rated the food animals as having less mental capacity. Lower perceived mind was also associated with greater edibility. The direction of the story just flipped. The animal's intelligence did not change between the kitchen and the field. The category around it changed the human perception. This does not mean every meat eater is secretly cruel or that every judgment is deliberate. It means people are good at reducing conflict between affection and appetite. We build mental compartments because dinner is easier when dinner does not look back as a someone. The brain, once again, has discovered administrative paperwork. That is why naming matters. Beef creates distance from cow. Pork creates distance from pig. A whole animal with a face can produce a different reaction from a neat cut under plastic. Processing changes not only texture, but attention. And now the horse walks in. In some places, horse meat is an ordinary commercial product. Scientists can purchase retail cuts and analyze their composition just as they would other meats. In France, researchers recently interviewed chefs about horse meat as a declining but still real culinary tradition. Elsewhere, eating a horse feels like eating a teammate. Horses carried people, pulled plows, went to war, raced, worked, and became individually named companions. The objection is not that horse tissue contains a universal anti-food molecule. The horse crossed a relationship boundary. Once an animal has a name, a history, and a place beside us, the plate can feel like betrayal. Dogs make that boundary even brighter. In many homes, a dog is not merely an animal. It is a family member with a bed, medical records, and a detailed opinion about the doorbell. Sometimes several opinions, delivered at maximum volume. Yet dog meat has existed in particular historical and regional contexts. The point is not to sensationalize those contexts or pretend they define entire countries. The point is that companion and food are roles assigned through relationships and institutions. They are powerful, but they are not globally identical. This is also why outrage travels badly. A person can condemn another culture's animal category while never examining the categories at home. The useful question is not, how could they? It is, what story made my own line feel natural? That question creates empathy without requiring agreement. It lets us inspect a boundary instead of using it as a weapon. Suspect 5 is sacredness. Some food rules are explicit. A species, body part, preparation, or combination is forbidden. The reason may involve religion, identity, purity, ancestry, ecology, or a history that cannot be reduced to nutrition. In studies with non-vegetarian Hindus in Singapore and India, sacred animals were rated as less edible and as having greater mental life. A Muslim comparison group did not show the same sacredness pattern for those animals. The researchers found that mind attribution helped connect sacredness with inedibility in the sampled groups. The animal on the outside had not changed. The social relationship had. That is not irrational decoration pasted onto biology. Shared rules coordinate communities. They mark belonging. They can protect identity through migration and pressure. In some contexts, taboos may also reduce hunting of particular wildlife, though no taboo automatically guarantees conservation. And taboos have exceptions, boundaries, and debates inside the communities that hold them. Age, region, class, generation, necessity, and individual belief all matter. Human culture rarely reads the terms and conditions with one voice. We have now acquitted poison, disease, disgust, economics, intelligence, companionship, and sacredness of acting alone. Each explains part of the map. None draws every border. So what is the actual mechanism? Think of an animal standing at the center of several overlapping circles. One circle is biological, toxins, parasites, pathogens, digestibility. One is ecological: abundance, reproductive rate, conservation status, trophic position. One is practical: can people catch it, raise it, transport it, preserve it, and sell it? One is emotional: disgust, affection, grief, fear, familiarity. One is social: religion, law, class, identity, family custom, national story. And one is relational: does this animal work with us, live beside us, resemble us, or occupy a named role in our lives? Where those circles overlap, a community creates a food category. Not from one rule, from a whole history compressed into a feeling. That is why the feeling is so fast. You do not consciously calculate pathogen compatibility, feed conversion, childhood memory, sacred symbolism, and wildlife law every time you see an animal. Culture performs the calculation in advance and hands you the answer as appetite or disgust. But there is one final test. If the categories are learned and movable, why do they feel morally permanent? Why does an exception often provoke anger rather than simple surprise? Because food tells a story about who we are. In experiments and surveys, national norms predicted attitudes and intentions around meat eating. Vegetarian identity can reshape meat disgust over time. Sacred identity changes perceived edibility. Social information can change willingness to try an insect. Eating is repeated, public, and intimate. It enters the body. Refusing a food can protect a group's boundary. Sharing it can signal trust. A menu is a quiet document of membership. That is also why food can be such a generous bridge. Someone gives you a dish, and with it, a small piece of the world that taught them what comfort tastes like. The danger is believing our own menu arrived directly from nature. Nature supplies chemistry and consequence. It does not print one human menu. Now look again at the impossible plate from the beginning. The rat was our symbol of contamination, but rats have been eaten in some places and times, while familiar livestock can carry contamination too. The insect was our symbol of disgust, but cultural exposure can turn pest into ingredient. The vulture was our symbol of a repellent diet, but its ecological role and conservation status explain more than the fantasy that meat becomes whatever an animal last ate. The horse and dog were symbols of companionship, but those relationships vary. The chimpanzee was our symbol of intelligence and kinship, yet primates have been hunted, which brings real ethical, conservation, and disease concerns rather than a magical, universal ban. And the polar bear was never a simple do-not-eat animal. It was a reminder that risk can hide in one tissue, while culture decides what to do with that knowledge. There is no empty seat for the animal humans never eat. The true object on the plate is a boundary, and boundaries can reveal care. Choosing not to eat an animal may express protection, kinship, restraint, reverence, or a growing willingness to notice another mind. That deserves more curiosity than mockery. It also deserves honesty. Our empathy is not distributed by a clean intelligence scale. It is shaped by proximity, stories, faces, names, and the categories we inherited. Once you see that, the mystery becomes less cynical, not more. A food boundary can move. Familiarity can soften disgust. Knowledge can expose risk. Relationships can widen concern. Laws and norms can protect species that were once treated only as resources. Humans are not trapped inside one ancient menu. If you want to keep tracing the hidden signals that turn an animal into a threat, a neighbor, a mind, or a meal, subscribe to Wild Signal. The next mystery begins exactly where the category stops feeling obvious. Until then, be suspicious of any menu that claims nature wrote it alone.